Hello, and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 48. Chris, hey there.
Hey there. How's it going?
It's going really well. I just came off of a week-long road trip through Tennessee, went to the Smoky Mountains for the first time. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, I felt like I was in a Hallmark card for fall. Beautiful. Waterfalls and trees, and it was great. It was really, really cool. And then saw a live band in Nashville, Camp. Is a country music band that I did not think I would ever enjoy. of the options for the trip, that was the one that I was like least familiar with, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like a thing to do in Nashville, and I really liked it. It was a really good band, and I've added them to Spotify now, and I've been playing their songs over and over. That was my week, so I didn't get a lot of work done, but I do have some continued thoughts about some stuff I've been talking about for the last couple episodes. How have you been? What did you get up to this last week?
Well, I did more lab stuff for my master's, which is kind of a recurring theme. I finished my Go lab, and the next lab is in Rust, and I have no experience in Rust, and so the first thing I have to do is learn Rust. And so, like, I knew this class was going to be a lot of work, and it is. It's more than I thought it was going to be. So, yeah, next semester I signed up only for one class instead of two, because I'm basically doing just my master's. Yeah, so I can talk about Rust. I have a few other things I got up to, but yeah, that was most of it.
I would love to hear about Rust. Similar to Go, that's a language that I keep hearing about that I know very little about. I think it might be a functional language.
So, not quite.
Okay. I don't know anything about Rust.
Yeah. So it's meant to be fill a similar role as C or C++, but instead of manual memory allocation, it has sort of safe memory allocation, because all of the owner of every object or every piece of data is explicit, and you can only have one owner. And then whatever is mutable, that's explicit as well. And so, like, you can do multi-threaded things really easily, because if you are not the owner and it's not mutable, then you can read from it anytime without worrying about it. If you are not the owner but it's mutable, then it has this thing called channels, just like Go, basically. So you can communicate when things change. So you can basically do multi-threaded things much easier and safer than, say, C or C++. So yeah, it's if you don't need C++, then you don't need Rust probably, but it is a way to safely build really fast programs.
Go also has sort of automatic memory management. Why would you use Rust instead of Go?
Yeah, so Go has there's like a few ways to do memory management. Garbage collection, which is, I'm pretty sure Go has garbage collection. We didn't do manual memory management, so it has to have garbage collection, I think. C and C++ have...
What if the model for Go is just like, you have to have enough RAM? Like,
right.
There's no... You cannot deallocate memory. That's
right.
The design of the language.
Yeah, so C has manual memory allocation, so you decide when things get allocated. Rust is totally different than those two, because you don't manually do it, but there also is no garbage collector. What happens is, since there's only one owner for a thing, when that owner goes out of scope, all of its things go out of scope. So it's not like an automatic garbage collection. It's like a sort of like implicit memory management, because like if your function ends, then all the things that function owned also go out of scope.
Okay, that sounds like garbage collection to me. I don't know that I understand the distinction.
Yeah, so the difference is garbage collection runs at some interval. And so, like, every 100 milliseconds or something, it goes and collects everything with no reference counters. That's usually how it happens. Rust is different because it's not at any interval or anything. Basically, you get to decide when it happens by ending the function.
Gotcha. Okay, so I imagine the benefit of that would be you have more efficient memory management, because memory is getting deallocated at the moment when you don't need it anymore. Well, closer to that, because it's when the function ends, as opposed to at a interval. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's automatic. So like with C, if you don't free it, then you get a memory leak. With Rust, there's no memory leaks, because if your function is running, then you are using the things that it is the owner of.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I am surprised that problem would be big enough to justify its own language. Is that a problem in this deep learning stuff that you're encountering frequently, of like you need your garbage collection to be a little bit quicker?
So no, it's not necessarily quicker. It's just the language itself enforces both thread and memory safeness.
Okay.
So No, this is actually deep learning specific at all. This is a language created by Mozilla to build Firefox in. So it's
Interesting.
Yeah, it's for things that have to be, so browsers, you don't want them to crash.
Yeah.
You want them to be super fast, and you have to have access to the metal. And it's meant to be an easier way, easier than C or C++, to manage like these low level, very fast, but also needs to be safe things.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Neat. How deep in the weeds are you in Rust? Are we doing like opening tutorials? Oh, you know what else I'm curious about is what's your process for learning a new language? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so in this case, it's a little different than if I was just learning it to do whatever I needed to, because I only need a very small subset of the language.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a piece of skeleton code, and so I'm basically going through tutorials, trying to see where the skeleton code they have applies, and then doing that. So I only need a few bits of the language. Like I don't need really deep things. And so yeah, I'm just trying to basically learn just in time to get the next bit of the skeleton code working.
Yep.
Yeah.
JIT learning. Love it. Have you, I think we've talked about before on this podcast, the site learnxinYminutes.com.
Yeah, you talked about that. I don't think I've looked at it though.
For this sort of thing of like, you just need to know enough of the language to know that, string concatenation is a dot instead of a plus sign, or, okay, memory management works in this different way, and this is just the thing to keep in mind. For people like you who already know several languages, and you just need to know, like, okay, I don't need to relearn, like, what a variable is, and how the basic fundamental concepts of computer science, and, like, what a for loop is. I just need to know what's the syntax for it, and are there any particular special gotchas in this language. And so it's when I'm in a similar position, like when I'm trying to learn Swift, that's how I was doing it.
Yeah, that maybe I should check that out too, because some of the hardest bits are like, it's not even the syntax stuff. So in Rust, because things have one owner and you have to declare when things are mutable, like you cannot share and change data the way you're expecting to, because if you pass a piece of data to a function, that function now owns the data. And so if you don't want that to happen, you either have to copy it or clone it, or do pass by reference, explicitly pass by reference saying that function now doesn't own it. So it's like it adds a lot of thinking overhead to some of the things that are like normal. So it's like the syntax isn't that hard. It's like changing how you are thinking about things.
Hold on, I don't think I understand what you said. If I call a function with a variable, and I am just using the default, I'm not saying that it's a reference or that I'm explicitly passing it by value. After I run that function, so when I call the function, then the function owns that variable.
Yep. And
then when the function ends, the Rust cleanup says, okay, clean up everything that was inside this function, and that will include the variable that I passed into the function?
Correct. So if you call,
what?
So if you call the same function twice in a row with the exact same arguments, like there's the default ones, the compiler will tell you that there's an error.
That's not okay. It's just going to go around deleting my variables. I don't like that at all.
Well, it won't. The compiler will tell you before you do it that there's a problem.
Okay. So. That would be so confusing if I was trying to like debug it by printing out like I call the function and I'm not getting the expected result because the function I'm writing is wrong or something, and then I try to print out the arguments for the function. They're all going to be like undefined or nil or something.
No, it won't even compile. So the way that Rust makes it safe is that the compiler won't let you do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Instead,
interesting.
You put a little ampersand before each of the variable names.
Yeah.
And that tells it that you're lending. It's called lending that value to the function.
Okay. I'm very surprised. I think this is just showing that I'm unfamiliar with the problems that the designers of this language, Mozilla, were encountering that made them do this. But it's a cool idea, but I would not make that the default. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, have the ampersand be that I would like you to delete the variable after I use it. How strange. Do you find yourself then, I guess you're just working in this demo program, but does it seem like the standard thing to do is just include the ampersand before every variable that you're passing to functions?
I have not done enough to figure out exactly what my default is, because it's so far it's pretty weird. Yeah,
interesting. How strange. I'm reminded of I don't usually think about things like memory management, but with the project I was working with my magician friend making a robot arm, part of that was Arduino, and there was a sort of complicated piece of it where the Arduino needs to receive serial communications in JSON. And there's other ways I could have done it, of like passing bits that would have been more efficient probably and a little bit faster, but passing it in JSON is fine. So like there's multiple servos on this arm, and to change the position of the servos, I just send it through a serial USB connection, a JSON object that is a key value store of the name and position that I would like each of the servos to be at. And when I compiled it, I was adapting code from someone else who had written the majority of it, and I would compile it, and it was fine. And I rewrote most of it, and in rewriting it, I saw that the sort of complicated JSON parsing object was defined in the function. And I thought, I think I remember from my undergraduate degree that like in C++, there's variables that can be on the heap and on the stack, and I don't remember which of those are, but that if you're defining a variable in the function, it gets allocated in like dynamic memory. And so I could make this a little bit more efficient by moving that variable declaration outside of the function, so it just does that once. And then every time the function's called, it just reuses that same variable, so that the memory gets allocated at compile time. And the first time I compiled it, it was like, whoa, you're using like 85% of the memory available on this device. Like, be careful. And I only saw that error because it was running on the compiler, and like I wouldn't have seen that. It was doing the same thing when it was running it live on the Arduino, but I just didn't see the error because it wasn't happening at compile time. So I could totally see how if I wasn't thinking about memory on this lower level device and thinking about like, oh, I'm coding on a device that has limited memory, like it's not something I have to do ever, that I could run into errors where, you know, if I had to run a function like that twice, while and simultaneously, so it was trying to use that amount of memory at the same time, like I think the Arduino would have crashed, and I would have been so confused as to why. So it's fun thinking about like we're still dealing with physical limitations. We're still dealing with, these are devices that are using bits, and the bits are stored on pieces of silicon, and that they run at a set speed that's kind of based on the speed of light, and you need to be thinking about these things, especially when the work that you're doing is going to be magnified, you know, millions or billions of times, that it's going to be running incredibly, insanely quickly, and if you don't have a working model of how the underlying stuff is operating, then you can get totally lost in not knowing why this crazy machine has broken.
Yeah, it's especially important for stuff like Arduino or IoT. I actually experienced that with my CUDA lab too. When I was running on my GPU, I had a big for loop that was going around things, which generally in GPUs you don't want to do for loops, but I was. And I realized that the for loop was I don't remember exactly. It was allocating more memory than what each core had a cache or something, and so I knew it was going to be a little bit slow. So I just broke it manually into 2 for loops, and it like sped it up by 30%.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just like because it got to use 1 cache instead of 2 or something like that. And it's like I was like, oh, cool. Like I recognized why something was kind of slow, and I did something manually, and it made it a lot faster, even though it was basically identical code, just 2 for loops instead of 1. Yeah, so that was a neat. I actually understood what was going on and was able to make it faster.
How rewarding! This sort of tangentially, this is kind of my justification for getting the new M1X MacBook Pro, because like I feel like people are going to be buying that are going to be using it just because they have a lot of money, and they're going to use it for like email and Facebook and YouTube, never touching any of the capacity that it has. But like there are several things that I'm doing that actually are hitting the limitations of what this M1 MacBook is able to do. Like there are things I do that max out all the cores, and getting more into machine learning, there are things I'm starting to do that are starting to use a lot more GPU. It's not like I'm just going after, I want the highest resolution graphics. Like, no, I'm one of the people who's actually capable of using the capacity of like the most advanced silicon that exists right now at a consumer level, at least. And then, you know, there's people on a whole different level that are writing code that's filling up, you know, giant server bays, and like the people doing machine learning at Tesla. My gosh, how I would just feel so cool. I feel like here's this problem that's, you know, I'm at the top of my field framing this problem, for the most advanced supercomputer custom designed to do this, and I'm maxing it out. I'm using all of the stuff in it, and any little edge that I can get by managing memory a little bit faster, or having designing a slightly more efficient SoC on the hardware side, like that capacity is going to be used, and I'm pushing it to the max. It feels really cool. I feel like we're the pioneers. We're doing the cool stuff. It's I like it.
Yeah, it feels neat. We talked about that, right? That Tesla's developing their own chip, like massive chip, like cubic foot, chip.
Like, I don't know if we talked about it on the record. We may have talked about it like afterwards.
Tesla's training is pushing the boundaries so much that they actually design their own chip. So they designed a chip. It's like how much is that? Like 4 square inches, something like that. And they put a bunch of them on a thing, so it's like a square foot of silicon. And then they, for the cooling and the power, it's about a cubic foot total. And so it's a cubic foot, and it replaces, I don't remember, at least a server rack worth of GPUs. It's ridiculous what it replaces. And since it's all in one chip, and they're worried about the speed of light and stuff like that. Their buses can be faster. They have higher, throughput and stuff like that. So yeah, it's crazy what they're doing.
We're in a really cool era of computing. Because Tesla, after they did that, they compressed the server rack down into a cube and also made it much more efficient because the stuff is physically close together. Really analogous, now that I think about it, with what Apple's doing with their own custom silicon and SoCs. Mm-hmm. You can just like pull all the different macro pieces of a computer together and physically reduce the distance that it has to travel, and have tricks like shared memory so that you don't have to copy data back and forth between the CPU and GPU. Like, there's a surprising amount of room for improvement. Like, I remember a conversation I was having with someone maybe 10 or 15 years ago about Moore's Law, and how, like, at the time, I think we were just starting to get down to 4 nanometer processes, and it was becoming very clear of like, okay, well, after that it gets kind of hazy, because now you have to worry about quantum tunneling, and there's only so far you can go with just shrinking the electronics of a transistor. And so it was looking, at the time we were talking about in this conversation, like, okay, well, it looks like, as soon as all the silicon gets to this tiny bit, that, okay, Moore's Law is probably going to slow down. I haven't seen a graph of it recently, but like, it seems like there's a lot of creative room still for moving things around, and like integrating more of the macro systems of, like, if you integrate the GPU and the CPU, and if you put stuff physically on top of each other now, instead of traveling in the X and Y plane, it can travel vertically up and down, and having custom hardware circuits for doing the stuff that you're doing, like in the new M1 Max, there's a hardware circuit for encoding in H.264 and ProRes. So any video encoding you're doing, that's running like on the hardware now. That's not work that the CPU is doing. Seems like it's just it's an exciting time. Like, I can imagine a future processor that has, like, I don't know, a TensorFlow module on it, where it's hardware designed to make the stuff that TensorFlow needs to do faster, and that may already be done with different GPUs and things. And I'm not sure what the benefit would be of, like, the speed improvement of doing that versus just having a really fast GPU. But I'm consistently surprised that progress comes from unexpected places. You can be really creative with how you're getting things done faster.
Yeah. The same thing happened with clock speeds, basically. Like, clock speeds got faster and faster and faster, and all of a sudden they couldn't really push clock speeds anymore, and then they went multi-core. And actually now clock speeds are dropping because it's way more power efficient. So you got slightly lower clock speeds, but lots of cores. Also, GPUs do have tensor cores. So cool. Tensor cores are a thing. Also, someone's probably yelling right now that Moore's Law is what it said is that let's see, what is it? Transistor density would double every 18 months. And so, yeah, that is coming to an end, actually. But the spirit of Moore's Law, which is that computers will get basically twice as fast every 18 months, that's continuing because of all these different interesting things. So, yeah, basically because they can't make transistors any smaller. Or, I mean, they still are making them smaller, but not easily make them as small. Yeah, it's neat. It also is like, hearing these professors talk, I know that I never want to do like this low level, like actual like designing and stuff. It's like they're talking about, cache lines and word sizes and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is all very interesting. I don't want this to be my professional career. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Very academically interesting, but like I agree. I would not want to be like I want to do the fun stuff. I want to spend 30 minutes and have a VR app or something. That's a fun layer of working on stuff that I like doing. Or write a little bit of Arduino code and get a robot arm to move. If I was just hacking away at this problem of like, okay, how do I get this complicated series of how do I design a tensor core so that it's 2% more efficient? Would have these huge ramifications in the industry of like, okay, now everyone's work on doing anything in TensorFlow is 2% faster, but it'd be, I don't know, it wouldn't feel rewarding to be that disconnected from like what the cool stuff is of the actual applications of it. But very academically interesting. It's fun.
Yep.
Cool. What else did you get up to this last week? I heard you have a child who's about to have a birthday.
That's right. Yeah.
Harry Potter fan.
Completely unrelated, but my kid wants to have a Harry Potter birthday party, which is fine. Like we do friend parties every other year, and this is his year for a friend party, and so we're trying to figure out how to do that safely and stuff. Now kids can get vaccinated, so that's cool. So he wants to have a Harry Potter party, and as part of it, he wants to give out wands to everybody so they can use the wands as part of the party.
That's so cool.
Yep, that's fine, totally. The easy way to do that is to buy, you can buy cheap plastic wands for about $2 a piece, on Amazon, like get a whole pack of them. That would be the rational thing to do.
Oh no.
But do I use this as an excuse to either buy a 3D printer or a wood lathe so that I can make a bunch of wands?
Yes.
Which is not financially efficient at all.
Not at
and
all.
will take way more time, but it's much more fun. So that's what I'm trying to figure out now is should I buy it? Do I have the time? And what would that look like?
I have several comments on this. First of all, do you not have a 3D printer?
No. Yeah.
I got my first one about a year ago, and I should have gotten it 10 years ago. It's great. There's so many things that you don't even know about that you can use for this, and so much fun of like, you don't even notice like, there's so many little problems I have that just introducing into my life this machine that can make anything. If I can just design it in 3D, if I can make an STL of it, it can exist. There's so many little things of like playing board games, having custom things to hold the cards and hold the dice, or like dice rollers, or like little stupid Tesla accessories to like hold stuff in place, or like the expanse of the problems that I'm capable of solving got so much bigger, and you can get one for like $300. It's like the price of what a printer used to cost a couple years ago, or the cost of a really nice 2D printer right now. You get this magical ability to just print out anything you want, and there's several online marketplaces like Thingiverse where you can just download stuff for free that people have already made. Like, it's amazing. You can make stuff that has moving parts, and it's just so cool. Or if you're building a bigger thing and you want a smaller model of it, you can just print it out. So like, independent of this, I would strongly nudge you in the direction of getting a 3D printer. They are very affordable. They're really easy to use. It's so much fun, even if you don't use it, and just like have it there to have that background process running in your brain of like, if there ever was anything I needed that was about this big and made of plastic that would solve this problem, I could do it there. So yes, I get a 3D printer. I have several recommendations. I got the Snap Maker, which is a combination CNC and laser cutter and 3D printer. You just snap out the head and screw a different one in, because functionally it's the same thing. It's just like, do you have movement precisely controlled and on 3 axes, and there's something you need to do while you're doing that. That one is expensive, but it's not expensive if you think about it as you're buying 3 things as one thing. It's
right.
If you take the price of it and cut it into 3, it's like a reasonable price for any of those things, and then it's much nicer. And my brother-in-law has 2 3D printers that he got that are much cheaper, that are more of like the do-it-yourself, and he's those I think are like in the $300 or $200 range, but he's constantly having to do more things of like calibrating, and there's a lot more manual control, whereas the Snapmaker just works. You just hit print and it just prints stuff out. I haven't had to mess with anything, and like most of the time, probably 90% of the time, the print just works. Is there a reason why you haven't gotten a 3D printer already? Has this just not come up before?
Yeah, well, we sort of talked about it, which is I know I will print like one thing, or in this case, a bunch of wands, and then like not print anything for like a year or two. So it's like I really, and also so the library near me has this thing where they actually have 3D printers. You can go and you just have to pay for the filament. And like I've done that once, and so like if it's right there anyway and I haven't done it, then I probably don't really need one.
No one needs one.
All right, yeah, that's true.
I think I would be very interested to see the things that you did with one if you had one. Here's the analogy. In a very similar way that the GPU that you got, just having it there, like the optimization shifts from how can I use this the smallest amount of time possible if you're paying per second of execution or whatever, to how can I use this as much as possible because I already bought the thing, and so if it's not being used, it's sort of being wasted. So just like how can I push more projects into this thing? I would love to see where your brain goes of things that you could do if that became the new problem of like you have this thing here and you got the machine and you could currently be printing stuff out. When I first got it, I was 3D printing just like nonstop for I don't know days. And then I'd have a gap of like a half an hour, and then I'd keep printing again new stuff. So yes, I think that would be a really cool thing to get, specifically for the problem of you want a bunch of Harry Potter wands. I have a suggestion. This is a problem that I had recently because when I went to the Harry Potter world and was looking at Harry Potter paraphernalia, if you buy a wand from the places where you're supposed to buy it, it's like $30. It's dumb. It's plastic with like a piece of metal in the middle. But that's for like the top quality, the replications of the wands from the films. If you go to Aliexpress.com, you can get the exact same wands. And I know because I've seen the ones that I got from there, and I've seen the ones after that like are the official ones. They are the same. They're coming from the same place. It's about $2 a wand. It takes like 2 months to ship, so I don't know if this would make sense for the party.
I gotta have it faster. Yeah.
Okay. Well, in the future, if you ever need to solve this problem again and you want a whole bunch of wands, if you get it directly from China, it's a tenth of the price.
That's cool. I've never bought from AliExpress. How is that experience?
I love it. I was really skeptical at first because I was thinking this can't possibly be real. How can you possibly ship me this thing for $2 with shipping? That doesn't make any sense. This is just going to be a scam. So I did a little test run of buying some stuff from it, and then I forgot about it. And then about a month and a half later, I got a whole bunch of packages from China, and I didn't remember what they were. And I filmed a little video of this, actually. I'll link it in the show notes, of me like opening these packages that I just did not remember what they were. Each one's like a little surprise. I'm like, oh, past me thought that I would need this, and yes, I do. This is really cool. And it's great. It's like it's the same stuff. I heard the analogy that Amazon is just a front end for Alibaba. That's like where all this stuff is being made, but Amazon has the local distribution centers and they can get it to you faster. But my understanding of a distinction here, Alibaba is for wholesalers. That's for if you want to like do drop shipping and you want to order 100 of a thing and put it up on Amazon. Aliexpress is, I think, the same company, but it's more for consumers. You can just order one of a thing and it comes in, and then if you want to, you could find that same thing on Alibaba and then order 100 of them, and it'll be cheaper. But it's still outrageously cheap on AliExpress. So for a whole category of things now, of like, if it's something I don't need in the next 2 months, but I would like to have it, and I care more about price than anything else, AliExpress is awesome. I've gotten so much stuff from there now of like little electronics and like Tamagotchi. I'm gonna give each of my family a Tamagotchi. And it's it's like $1.50 each. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. How is this? But I think that's just the price that things are. And a lot of the times it'll be like 10 or 15 times less than the stuff on Amazon. But at minimum it'll be half or a third the price. So yeah, you're gonna burn like several days on AliExpress. Just like anything you've ever wanted is so much cheaper there. Anything with clothing or like jackets or I got a bunch of magic tricks on there that I wasn't able to afford as a child. That, it was like a $30 card trick when I was a kid, and I found it on Aliexpress for $1.50. And so I got like 4 of them, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, it's great. Yes, double thumbs up for AliExpress.com.
Cool, yeah. Well, one of the things, I heard this before and didn't go searching, but one of the things I know is way cheaper is anything electronics, parts like LEDs and, resistors and stuff, and anything building materials like aluminum extrusions or things like that. Those are all cheaper if you order them direct. But you have to order, like 30 of them, and you may only need a few. I haven't looked though, but that's very interesting. I will have to check that out afterwards. Yeah.
Through Alibaba, you would have to order 30 of them, but AliExpress, I found out about recently, and you just order one of the thing. Like for the Tamagotchis I got, I could have ordered just one, and I did to test it out and be like, okay, yes, is this real?
Is this
yeah.
It doesn't.
Got 10 of them.
Yeah, it's not like in Chinese when you get it or something, right?
No, I don't think so. Actually, I just tested to see if it turned on. I don't know if it might. It might be in Chinese. I might have spent $15 on like 10 Tamagotchis that are in Chinese, but. Now my family gets to learn Chinese.
I was going to say, you can also buy a Learn Mandarin CD from AliExpress.
Yes. Yes. Genius. That's so funny. I wanted to ask you a quick question, totally changing gears. Both of us have the Oculus Quest 2 from Facebook, now Meta. And I've been seeing a lot more posts on Hacker News recently about working in VR, setting up virtual monitors and having code. And I think I haven't tried it yet. I think I might try it later today. But I think the resistance I'm thinking about right now is that I can't imagine I'm going to be able to read the text unless the screen is just gigantic. Have you tried anything like that? Have you thought about wanting to move work into VR?
I haven't. No. Part of my question is, what does eye strain do when it's on your head for that long? Like my eyes sort of hurt after I take it off after a while. So. I don't know if that goes away or if it's bad for your eyes or something. The other thing is about text. The things that I have heard that it's really good for is anything, especially 3D design, but like design related generally. So like it's not text, if you're pushing around, if you're sort of sculpting a 3D object, then it's great to be in 3D so you can see what it looks like. Yep. So stuff like that I've heard really good. But yeah, Zuckerberg keeps pushing his metaverse, and I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Like he seems to think that it's the future, and so a lot of people are talking about it, but no one. I don't know. I'm very, very skeptical.
What is the metaverse? I haven't seen that video yet of the announcement that he did. I think what he's talking about is like this idea that you can have a separate reality, just like an extension of VR. That the metaverse could be like a platform for VR in the same way that like the internet is the platform for the web. That's a connected way to share things that are in 2D, like videos and photos, but the metaverse would be like a layer on top of the internet where everything was in 3D. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think part of the problem is it means different things to different people, but my understanding is you can do things like have meetings where everyone's an avatar, right? So you can have your avatar and do different things. So it's kind of like Second Life, I think. Although there's a thread on Hacker News, like why is the metaverse not just Second Life? And I sort of read part of it, but I keep thinking of that movie, The Mean Girls, where it's like, stop trying to make fetch happen. So it's like, stop trying to make metaverse happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But like him pushing it, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I really think it's really neat. Like it's really very interesting to like be able to be present with someone in a meeting with avatars. But the idea that I'm going to spend 8 hours in that, especially like maybe in the future, but like right now the technology is not there at all. I think like having an Oculus Quest on my head for 8 hours doesn't sound fun.
This is something I think about all the time, but what if we are already in the metaverse? What if that's what this is? Looking like the direction where everything is going is that for VR is going to be indistinguishable from reality, and we're going to get to the point where you can just, jack up your spinal column and start receiving fake inputs from a computer or something else. It's pretty nice in here. Like, I don't know that this is a cool place to be. I get to go to the virtual Smoky Mountains, and it's very nice there. I see a lot of benefits to it too. Of like, I think part of the lesson society learned from the pandemic is like, there's a lot of value to be able to have as an option, being able to interact in higher fidelity remotely. The when these things become more prolific and like, you know, everyone has a VR headset, how cool would it be if, you know, we could be live recording this podcast in front of a virtual audience, and we have our own virtual auditorium where people can go and sit and, like, you know, ask questions, and we can look out at that audience and see what their reactions are and stuff. Like, that'd be really cool, and it would feel a lot like if we were actually doing that. And VR has all these advantages of, like, space is no longer valuable. Space doesn't cost anything. So if you want your auditorium to be, you know, in the, what's the famous auditorium in New York?
Carnegie
If you want it to
Hall?
be in a recreational, like, whatever the fanciest auditorium is that you would want, you can do that. If you want everything to be decorated in this crazy way and everything made of gold, like, you can do that. If you want a crazy fancy view of, like, okay, you want all of that and you want it to be on top of Mount Everest, that's the view outside the windows, like, you can do that. I see a lot of potential in just decoupling the experience that you have in that sort of place with the scarcity of actually being in a place like that.
Yeah. So I see a lot of parallels to, like, the internet. And right now with VR, we're like early internet. You have to go sit at a desktop computer to access the internet kind of days, because you have to put on this big headset. I think when internet really took off, like, it was taking off, but then when mobile phones came out and you carried it around everywhere, you could just take it out, do something, put it back in. So yeah, if VR was as easy as, like, I tap the side of my glasses and now I see VR, that's a totally different ball game than I have to go to the special place where my Oculus is, put it on, and it's this big heavy thing, and use the controllers. That feels more like you know, sitting down at a video game console or something to me still.
Yeah.
So
drawing the analogy to the internet that feels very fitting. I'm reminded of things like books or audiobooks. 30 years ago, that used to be, you're talking about a physical book. You're talking about, like, going to a library or going to a bookstore, and you have to get the physical book. And now when I think about a book, I think much more abstractly about, like, it's the content of the book. And I might choose to have a physical version of the book, but the physical version is not the book. The book in my head is much more like the file in Audible that I can download, and it's not even, like, that particular copy. It's just, like, the fact that I have an easy way to access that information. I'm thinking about it much more as the bits of the book. And the same is true, I think, for things like pictures or videos or movies. All of those things became more abstracted because they could be perfectly represented just on a screen and accessed through the internet just whenever you needed them. So the existence of the internet made it less necessary to need physical representations of these abstract ideas. So applying that to the metaverse, how many three-dimensional things do we have that are going to stop having any meaning once we can have a high-fidelity recreation of those things in VR? Like, you know, you don't need as nice of a house, I guess, if you can just have one room that's blank that can become any virtual room. You don't need a theater room if you can strap on your VR headset and be in an IMAX theater. I'm really curious to see what other things like that there are. Like, I don't know, maybe art on the walls you don't need if you can just project virtual art through your glasses. And if you just take your glasses off, it's the bare wall again. But if you're wearing your glasses all the time and the AR is ubiquitous, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm excited to see what's coming. So I guess someone has to move. So I guess if Zuck is moving early, then that's okay. I'm reminded a little bit of, so you talked about books. Like, books to me aren't just books. I buy a lot of physical books, mostly for, like, authors that I follow or want to support or whatever. But often for, like, any nonfiction book, before I read it, I'll, like, watch a video that the author has done, like an interview, you know, or something, and then I'll go online and read some forum about the thing. So the book is a lot more than just a book now. It's like all this digital bread, you know, crumbs of what is in the book. So maybe the metaverse has something like that. You know, it's not like objects aren't just objects anymore. It's, you have your virtual object and you have your, you know, people that are talking about your virtual object and your, I don't know, whatever. So it's like more connected information about things. Yeah, interesting.
It's a cool way to look at it, that each object is, the meaning of the object isn't just the object, it's the connection of that object to everything else. I'm reminded of there's an idea in Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life that your laptop only works because of the environment that it's in. Like your laptop is supported by this infrastructure of electricity that goes and can feed the right kind of electricity at the right voltage to your laptop. And your laptop is useful because it's connected to the internet, and it speaks the same language as all the computers on the internet do right now. If you've got a computer from 30 years ago, like a computer from 30 years ago today means less and is capable of fewer things than it was 30 years ago, because 30 years ago it was connected to things. It was much more, its connections were, I don't know, higher fidelity or like more important, or were able to get more value than it would be right now. So looking at just everyday things, each of those things is connected in this way that you don't really think about, but it's much more than just the thing that it is. So to think that you could take your laptop and it would still be useful 50 years from now is silly, because it's not just about the laptop. It's about how it's connected to everything else.
Yeah, there was a thought experiment, like, I don't remember where I was reading this, but it's what would be the most valuable thing to take back with you in time. And, you know, you might think like a cell phone, right? No, absolutely useless. Because it's going to die quickly. There's no GPS, there's no cell, you know, right? Yeah. No electricity. One of the more capable things is like a calculator, a solar powered calculator. Because that'll last for a really long time, and doing complex calculations is like very important to people like running armies and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like a medical textbook. It's like hugely valuable. So yeah, these things that can stand on their own and actually mean something.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like the idea of a calculator, a solar-powered calculator. Would actually, can you imagine, like, you bring that back in time 2,000 years?
Someone else said you'd be burned at the stake pretty quick.
Yeah, right. How would you even think about that? And then, you know, if it got in the hands of like the king of Sumar or something, I'm imagining like they have this big stone edifice and you got to go in and there's all these guards in front. And you go up and there's like this, you know, this light shining from carved stone things in the roof, and it's highlighting this pillar. And on the pillar's like a shitty Casio solar powered calculator, like 4 function. It's just the most valuable thing in the kingdom. That'd be so funny. Oh man, I want to see a movie about this now. Good stuff. Cool. I would like to update you on my experience in renting out my old car. I have made $314.50, and I have lost a lot of mental fatigue.
Okay.
So on the site that I'm renting it out on Hire Car, it's designed to rent cars out to people who are driving Uber. And so I sort of had a loose conception of who's the type of customer who would use this, of like, okay, maybe it's someone who like doesn't want to use their primary car, or maybe someone who was driving for Uber but has their car in the shop, or maybe it's someone who like doesn't have a car and wouldn't like to drive for it. And the picture I'm getting now, man, and this is going to be really hard to talk about without just sounding horribly classist and like out of touch with reality, is like I'm getting I feel so like elitist and like that I don't understand the plights of the common working man in my interactions with the first person who rented this car, because they rented it out for 2 days, and it was like $80 to rent it out for 2 days. And so 2 days driving for Uber and Lyft, I don't know, you make like a couple $100, so that makes sense. It's a positive ROI. And when they picked up the car, they said that they might want to extend for 2 days. So I was like, oh, maybe they want to extend for 2 days because like that's not, you know, that they don't know whether or not they want to keep doing it, or maybe they have like a thing coming up in 2 days. And 2 days come by, and it's like half an hour before the extension deadline, and they text me and are like, I'm waiting for the money to come in so that I can pay this car. And I was like, oh, you don't have $80 to pay for this thing that's making you money? And I've been thinking about that for like the last week of like, I don't understand. I've never been that poor. And I just feel terrible of like, I'm making money on this car. That's this lifeline to this person that's unable to, like, they're just down to the wire, and they were able to pay for it the last second and get the other $80 through and extend for another 2 days. And then for several days they were unresponsive, and there was a period of like a day and a half where the car was due, but it wasn't returned. And I was trying to message them being like, hey, are you going to return my car? Or should I file a police report? Or how does this work? And the latest update, they've just been like renewing it for a day or two at a time. The latest update is that they extended it for another day, and it was due I think 2 hours ago, and I have yet to receive a message from them. And I've sort of just resigned myself to like, it's a car worth about $3,000. This is an experiment in, if I want to buy 10 cars like this. But at the same time that I'm doing this and like have my capitalist hat on of like, all right, I made $315 from this one car, so I could make $3,000 if I had 10 cars. And at the same time, I'm like, I'm messaging this woman who can't afford an $80 charge, and like, oh my gosh, I don't understand that. There is so much about her life that I feel like I wouldn't understand. Like, I would love to just sit down and have a meal and just ask her so many questions about like, how do you do anything? And man, I feel like I sound like such an asshole right now. Like, I don't understand the poor. How do they get by? But I didn't realize. Like, I had a conception of, oh man, billionaires must be so out of touch because they don't know that they just hop on their private jet and scoot around places. And I didn't realize that like that's me, because I can afford to have a car and I can afford to have 2 cars. And when I get hit with surprise $80 expenses, I don't even think about it. Like, it would hurt a little bit if like, that if I bought an $80 lunch, I'd be like, oh man, that was an expensive lunch. I won't do that again. But like, I'd stop thinking about it after that. And the idea that like the core thing, what feels analogous to me is like, if I couldn't afford, the cost to run my server that's running my web application, which is like, $4 a month or something per server, that would be in dire straits. That I'd be living so much closer to the metal of like hand to mouth of like, oh man, that's what I've been thinking about. How did I come? Am I coming across right now? It's just like, what is your feeling about this, and also how I've portrayed my struggles with these ideas?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an important reality check, because like we were just talking about 3D printers, and like $300 3D printer, it's like, oh, that's almost nothing compared to what it was. But it's like, if you don't have any money, then $80 to have a money making car as an asset is a lot. Yeah, I'm reminded of a Reddit thread I read recently about payday loans, which are awful. But it also talked about pawn shops, and there were a lot of people on Reddit who were like, yeah, I had to pawn my grandmother's wedding ring for a while, and I just paid $35 a month for years, and then eventually got my life together and was able to buy a pack. But it's like, so they paid like triple the cost of the ring or something over a couple of years. And yeah, I mean, the sad reality is probably half the country is in is in that situation. And, yeah, I don't know what to do about it either. It's one reason that politicians can be so out of touch, because they're in the same situation that we are, right? They have money coming in and they just can't even understand what it's like to live like that, even though half of their constituents do. I don't know what to do about it other than to say that, yeah, we should probably do more work to, run into those situations more often. Also very interesting. I thought that you were going to be renting your car out to like people visiting the city or something. It didn't even occur to me that people might rent cars in order to drive them for Uber. I didn't even think about that. That's interesting.
I was planning on renting it out on a site for renting it out to people just on vacation on something like Turo, because that's what I'd used. And when I tried to sign my car up for it, I drove this car into the ground. It's got like, I don't know, 160 miles on it. It's fallen apart. It's in very good working condition. Like, I've kept it maintained, but like there's a lot of body damages, and the center console like doesn't lock again. So I just duct taped some magnets to it so it stays down. There's a limit on Turo for, I think your car has to have less than 120,000 miles on it to be able to rent it out on that. So I was looking for other alternatives, and Hire Car popped up as an alternative of like, you can just put any working car on there, and it's much higher mileage. The limit I put on my car is you can drive 1,000 miles a day on it. So that I think it makes a lot more sense for people in the gig economy, because there's limits on that if you're trying to do that for something like Turo. So I'm actually able to charge much more for it than I would be able to for this level of car, because people running it on a hire car care much more about like they're just going to put miles on it. They don't really care about how nice the car is. But someone on vacation would want to buy a nicer car, so they would pay less for it. Yeah. It feels sort of like I would love to help, and I don't know an effective way to help. And I would love if the answer was something like, having cars on this platform that I'm renting out is helping people, because now I've provided a way for someone in a risky financial situation to be able to provide money for themselves. All you need is a driver's license. I don't feel like it's extortionist. Like I'm charging $30. Well, I think I'm charging $36 a day for the rental, which is like on the low end of cars in my area. So it feels like I could be like, if I helped this person who rented my car the first time, well, if I had more cars on this, I could be helping more of them. I would just really like to be on the same page of like, hey, you can totally be late in payment. That's fine. But I really would like you to message me and just let me know what's going on, so I don't think that my car got stolen. That would be really cool. But I'm hopeful overall, because like financially, this, I made back 10% of the value of the car in 7 days. That seems absurd to me.
Right.
In terms of an investment, like if I could automate more of just the mental energy I'm putting towards messaging and like worrying about my car if I'm gonna have to file a police report, I would love to scale this up. We've talked a bit before about like struggling with ways to I've been struggling with ways to figure out how to spend money to make more money, and this seems really, really straightforward. This is just you buy cars and you put more of them on the app, and if you want to make 10 times more money, you buy 10 times more cars, and that's it. So I like the idea of that, and as soon as I get the car back, I guess I'll know what the full picture of this thing is, and if I want to scale it up. But yeah, lots of philosophical thoughts just about. I think I frequently forget how privileged I am, of like the concerns that I have in my life would just seem so stupidly trivial to someone in the position of not being able to spend $80 to like rent a car and get the weekly discount because they're buying a bunch of days at the same time, or someone having to pawn their grandmother's wedding ring and pay it back. Like, man, I feel like I can't complain about anything when those seem like such more important, like lower level problems. Yeah, so that's what I've gotten from that experience.
Yeah, no easy answers, and I don't have much more to say about it without thinking about it.
Totally switching gears. This is going to be a rough transition.
I'm buying a boat.
I was looking at yachts recently, and oh boy. So we've been talking about the last few episodes, this struggle with switching between work and taking breaks, and having a little bit of dopamine from these dopamine machines of Twitter or YouTube. And I had a new tidbit of information I wanted to just bounce off of you. I was talking with a friend of mine on the drive back about his method of doing this is this online card game called Dominion. Fantastic game. It's great. I love playing it like once a week. For him, hearing him talk about this game, it was really interesting because he framed it in a really similar way that we have framed our relationships with Twitter and YouTube, of like, he'll get into it and then he just won't be able to stop. And it was really interesting hearing him describe that, and having played the game and been familiar with it, of like, I have no problem just, playing for a game or two and then going off. But for him, it sounded much more like an addiction. And at the same time, he was describing it in a way that I would describe using YouTube, of like, the problem that I have is I'll go and just want a quick break, and then I'll end up spending an hour watching stupid videos that I didn't want to watch. And so it helped me sort of put my finger on that the problem seems to be that it's not the use of the thing, it's that I can't stop using it. It's that I'm missing the thing to pull myself back out of it into the thing that I wanted to do. But the solution that I feel like we landed on 2 weeks ago was like, quit cold turkey. And that just made me feel sad. I didn't like that because I had nothing to replace it with. I had some ideas of things to replace it with, but it didn't scratch the itch in the same way. And so I've started like tempering. Okay, let's, I don't have to do this right now, but there's this thing I was going to watch this YouTube video about, so I'm in need of a break. Let me go ahead and watch that right now. And I still have the guardrails up of like if I try to see the home page of YouTube, it my browser extension won't let me. But I'm curious on your end, getting an update on if you've kept Twitter uninstalled, and if you've felt that same sort of like sadness at not having an easy way to get that same sort of dopamine itch. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think me deleting Twitter is a little different than you deleting YouTube, because I just deleted it off my phone, but I still do it on my computer. So it was not a cold turkey thing. It was just when I'm just have my phone with me, I should probably be more present. That's what I wanted. And so, and I feel like that has happened. And so I still go to like Hacker News on my phone, but I don't read it for as long as I read Twitter on my phone. Like, just sitting around with family, I would just be scrolling Twitter, which is, I think, not good. So now I find myself more engaged with things that are not my phone. I still waste a lot of time on YouTube, though, and I would feel very sad if that went away cold turkey. So, but that's all on my computer, not my phone. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I would feel very bad if that went away, because that's one of the way, like, if you just work all the time, then you're going to burn out real fast. And so you do need, like, I do need some output. The reason that I want a wood lathe to make these magic wands with is because I watch a lot of woodworking channels, and it seems very interesting. Wood lathes, by the way, are surprisingly dangerous, which is why I haven't bought one yet. They don't seem very dangerous, but if you catch any piece of clothing, like in something that's turning, really fast, you can like tear off skin and fingers.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I may still not buy one, because like the risk reward ratio seems off, because I need my fingers to type. So, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I need some distraction. It's the regulating how much that's trouble.
I think my main takeaway from this experiment has been to make smaller adjustments. My processes in life are working pretty well. I get stuff done. I have not yet gotten audited. I pay my bills. I'm living a pretty good life. I'm eating well. I'm exercising a adequate amount. I think what I've learned from this is to take seriously making major alterations to how I'm spending my time, and that I can have the goal of, I'd like to watch no YouTube in a day, in this mode of that I'm watching it just to sort of burn time, but that going from watching it for 3 hours a day to nothing is jarring, and it feels like it would be more effective to taper that off and do something more similar to how you did, of like, okay, well, no Twitter on the phone, but you can still do it on the computer. And then if you're still unhappy with that, if you're looking at how you spent your time and, okay, well, spent too much time on Twitter, okay, well, let's just spend a little less time, and go from there. And okay, well, I tried to spend a little less time and it didn't work. Okay, well, let's try this other thing to still just spend a little less time. So yeah, positive growth. I feel like I got to know more about myself and how to more effectively change my behavior, which feels good.
Cool. Yeah. Hopefully it continues positively. Yeah.
I think so. I think that's all I got. Yeah. One small note. I just felt I feel really good today. I've gotten several coding things done this morning, and for the first time in a long time, I feel excited to work on File Inbox. So I'm probably going to bang out like 4 Pomodoros on that today. I like know what I'm going to work on, and the pathway seems clear, and like I feel unencumbered by this strange cloud of like negative emotion that I've had for the last 2 weeks of like listlessness and demotivation and like not wanting to work on anything, and File Inbox in particular. Feels like it's lifted, which feels good.
Sounds like vacations work.
I think so, especially road trips. Very meditative. Cool, Chris. That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.